Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Graham. I am the Fund the UC coordinator for UC. This event will highlight the dynamic and impactful nature of the Pell Grant. We will discuss its history, current application, and future developments. Each panelist will describe a facet of the Pell Grant that relates to their expertise. Specifically, we will discuss the Pell Grant's impact on students, former and current, how it's used at UC Davis, and how we plan to double the Pell for students over the next 4 years. The primary focus of this event is to provide students with an authentic dissemination of Pell Grant information that they can use to further advocate for doubling the Pell in the future. So now I will pass it off to our moderator, Maria.
Much for hopping on today. My name is Maria Martinez, and I'm the AACCD External Vice President. Our office focuses on increasing undergraduate civic engagement and representing our students in all spaces where decisions about us are being made. And yeah, as part of our work, we carry out the campaign strategized by the UC Student Association with a number of different partners that you'll get to meet today. So without further ado, let's get started. I first want to introduce to y'all our campus Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Pablo Reguerin. But yeah, please tell us about the Pell Grant. Why should our students care about it, and how does it impact us today?
Thank you, Maria. First of all, it's great to be here with everyone. And I want to start by thanking and acknowledging all of the partners, the coalition of partners that have come together, the ASUCD External Affairs team, our Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships, our Government Relations team, and of course, the broader UC System-Wide Student Association. So thank you for bringing us together and for calling on Congress and as they pass legislation to our president, really to increase and to double the maximum Pell Grant over the next 4 years. This is vital on a whole host of reasons. Number one, we know that the Pell Grant has been instrumental in the social mobility to many across our country, and it supports our economy. It doesn't just have an impact on those attending colleges and the families, but we know from research it has a much broader effect. And in particular, the importance of the Pell Grant, of which I know myself and many others have been beneficiaries and would not be here today if it weren't for the Pell Grant and federal and state and local financial aid programs. So it's been 55 years since the Higher Education Reauthorization Act that expanded financial aid programs. And we've seen the impact across communities of color, across low-income communities. And we know that when we can support students and remove barriers, financial barriers, that not only is it, again, an impact for them, but they go out and create businesses, they serve as educators, they contribute to addressing many of the challenges that we face in our society. And so this is really an investment on behalf of everyone. In the research around student pathways in higher education, there are some findings, particularly that have empirical evidence to support about financial aid and what we've learned over these past 55 years around financial aid. Number one, we know that the complexity of a program and the way that it's delivered can impact the success on college students. So how they're developed. The Pell Grant is one of the most simple programs. It is already connected as part of our FAFSA process, and where students are reviewed. It becomes part of your financial aid process, and then it gets pushed out with your financial aid. So there aren't additional layers or steps. And so it is one of the simplest programs that provides a big benefit in terms of the student experience. Second thing that is important about successful financial aid investments and models is that programs that have some type of programs that have some kind of enrollment areas to meet, such as the satisfactory academic progress, so that when they're tied to benchmarks that students have to meet academically, they also can have a greater impact on academic achievement and can have more of what's called a boosting effect on outcomes and persistence. And then third, we know we have a lot of evidence to support that grant aid makes a great impact in student success. And there's far less research or effectiveness when compared to student loans. And so all these three things together really make for viable and important financial aid investments. And the Pell Grant really represents that. So being able to increase the amount of Pell will also reduce the impact on students who are not using all of their financial aid or may not be taking out all of their loans, which directly contributes to housing insecurity and food insecurity, and then has an impact on students' ability to succeed. So it's vital that we continue to make this investment, that we call with a lot of evidence behind the moral reasons as to why we want to continue to invest in social mobility. It still remains the case today that there are three key social mobility ladders. So the three ways folks get into the middle class are one, through starting a business, buying a home, or getting a college degree. Those remain empirically the three pathways. And the Pell Grant really amplifies the pathway around going to college and having an impact. And as we look at evidence, as we look at data, it's all very important. However, we always have to keep in mind that behind each data point is a student narrative, a family, a community that they came from, and that they're also working to make an impact more broadly. So the Pell Grant is one of the simplest and high impact manners in which we can increase and boost our economy and support our society and equity more broadly. So again, I want to thank you all for inviting me today. I want to join you in this call to Congress and into making an investment in our broader community. So again, thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing to support this campaign.
Thank you so much for your words of encouragement around our advocacy. I think our participants will definitely appreciate how you painted the landscape of the Pell Grant in higher education, and especially here at UC Davis. So yeah, thank you once more. Now I would definitely want to turn it over to our Executive Director of the UC Davis Financial Aid Office, and she's going to get into a little bit more of the intricacies of the Pell Grant and her perspective here at our campus.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deborah Agee, and I'm the Executive Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships. And I am going to share my screen now so that I can begin to tell you a little bit about the experience on our campus. Here we go. So first, let's talk a little bit about the Pell Grant. This is a program that started out many years ago as the Basic Educational Opportunity Grant, the BEOG, and it was later named after one of the chief legislative sponsors, Senator Claiborne Pell. And this is a federal grant that is awarded to undergraduate students who have exceptional financial need. Just a little fun fact about how old I am. I received the BEOG when I was an undergraduate student. And later, when I graduated and got my master's degree in public administration, I was in DC doing work on federal financial aid programs. And I had the distinct honor of meeting Senator Claiborne Pell, and I was a complete fangirl. I went and shook his hand and thanked him on behalf of all low-income students for his work in student financial aid, and particularly around the Pell Grant. It meant so much to me and to so many. The students who receive this grant have to file the free application for student aid. It is the FAFSA. And you have to meet various eligibility requirements. This is obviously a need-based program. To be eligible for the Pell Grant, you have to have not already received a bachelor's, graduate, or professional degree. So this has to be your first degree. And the award amount was up to $6,345 for last academic year, with a 12-semester limit on eligibility. Pell Grant students here at UCD is a large percentage of our financial aid population. These are the neediest students. You can see as of 2019, the percentage of Pell recipients was 36%, so more than a third of our students are Pell recipients. You can see that percentage has been trending downward in the past few years. Our student population, seems to be getting a little wealthier, although in the UC, we have a significant portion of our students are Pell Grant recipients, and that is what makes the UCs and UC Davis a critical driver of social mobility in the state of California. And as you look at this data, you can see that freshmen on our campus are coming in at 32% are receiving Pell Grants, but our transfer students, 46% of our transfer students are Pell recipients. In 2019-20, 52.4% of our Pell recipients had a 0 EFC. So they qualify for the maximum Pell Grant. So that expected family contribution of 0 is quite distinct. And you see that the average parent income for our Pell recipients is just $26,726. So that is, a very low income. And 81% of our UCD Pell recipients are dependent students, and 19% are independent students. I'm gonna make this now. I'm moving this out of the way. So student debt. You can see that Pell recipients have a larger average debt in general, or the percentage of borrowers are much higher. So you see the Pell recipients are borrowing, 67% of our Pell recipients are borrowing, and their average debt is $16,000. So if you look how at the entire period from 2019 to 2009, you see that a very significant portion of our Pell recipients are borrowers, because obviously these are needier students. Also, Pell recipients work at a higher rate than non-Pell recipients, and those that do work, they're working more hours than non-Pell recipients because they need every funding source that they can, including work. If you look at the Pell student retention rates at UC Davis, you can see that the retention rates for non-Pell recipients are higher than Pell recipients. And the reason that we see that is Pell recipients have greater needs, and and many of them, when we see that more than half of our Pell recipients are 0 EFC, in the financial aid community, we have started talking more and more about negative EFC, because these students come in with so much greater need than other students do, that they find themselves, really relying on basic needs funding. They are at a much higher rate of food insecurity as well. So in summary, I want to say that investment in higher education is a critical part of low-income student access. And Pell Grant is the basic foundation for what makes it possible for low-income students to get a college education. And this is critical. This effort by the students and having this as being a student-led initiative is tremendous. And in Washington, D.C., your voice means so much, more than what any of the rest of us can say. The experiences, the personal experiences of every one of you really drive the thinking of what's going on in DC. And I encourage each and every one of you to participate in this effort. And I am thankful to be a part of this effort in collaboration with all of you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. I think seeing the numbers really contextualizes the need for doubling the Pell. What stuck with me was that more than half the Pell Grant recipients had an EFC of 0, which is just ridiculous when you look at it, but your insight has been invaluable in this effort, and we're so excited to have this partnership with you. So yeah, thank you once more. And with that, I would like to introduce a Pell Grant student, actually. His name is Hipólito Ceros, and he's actually the youngest elected city councilman in the city of Lindsay in Tulare County. So snaps to you. And yeah, I'll pass it over to you to talk a little bit about your experience with the Pell Grant.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Hipólito Angel Ceros. This is my last year at Davis. I'm a student in the Science and Technology Studies department doing an emphasis in data and media technologies, and I'm also doing a minor in technology management. So first and foremost, I'm really happy to be here and leverage how the Pell Grant has facilitated and supported not only my educational endeavors, but my real life career goals. So growing up, when I thought of college, me and my family always had that financial burden sort of just hovering over our head, thinking about not only how I'm going to get to college, but how I'm going to financially maneuver through it. And I had these sort of scary thoughts just because when I thought of college and higher education, I thought you had to be privileged and make a certain amount of money. I thought you had to be a certain skin color or know certain people. But thanks to the Pell Grant, those doubts and financial burdens, they have been substantially lifted. It has allowed me to put my complete focus on a school that, I mean, as we all know, is extremely vigorous and demanding. Thanks to the Pell Grant, I was able to branch out in terms of time management. Even though I still had a part-time job to give me that additional financial stability, I knew I wasn't going to leave UC Davis in a deep hole of debt. And I wasn't going to be another contributor to the mass amount of student loan debt that's only increasing. And again, even though the Pell Grant did not cover everything that was required, I can confidently say that my goals would not have been reached without that additional financial support. Being a Pell Grant recipient has motivated me to motivate others to strive for their educational endeavors. And honestly, thanks to the Pell Grant, I was encouraged to become more civically engaged. And this is especially crucial because we're in a moment where having our voice heard is so crucial. As you guys know, I'm a newly elected council member and for my small town of Lindsay, and I hope to be a model for future generations to become civically engaged as well, and not feel sort of like restrained because of that financial burden that's associated with college. I would also like to note that as a first generation student, this has been almost like a blessing in disguise. You know, I'm attempting to pave a path for others who may feel like college and higher education is impossible. It's really given me that foundation and motivation to not only reach my educational goals, but transcribe that highly valued education at UC Davis into the real world. And then my last final note, since this is a call to Congress, if I'm not mistaken, if we really expect future generations to succeed and excel, then we really need to invest into these future generations, which means doubling the Pell Grant.
Thank you so much. I think your testimony definitely reflects one of many stories that the Pell Grant has allowed our students to feel empowered in their goals and their education. And for the students on the call, I hope that his story is kind of a reflection of the impact that your voice can have once you get involved in our advocacy work. So yeah, thank you again. And I would also like to introduce another fellow Aggie and alumni, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Health, Wellness, and Divisional Resources, Corey Wu.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I really appreciate it. And my name is Corey Vu. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Health, Wellness, and Division Resources within Student Affairs. And I don't know if I would be in this position right now without the help of Pell grant that helped me get through UC Davis. My family, came to the United States in 1975 during the war. We were refugee immigrants to the United States. I came over to the United States, with a single parent. I was the oldest in my family. I attended UC Davis in 1986, so about 11 years after coming to the United States, being accepted at UC Davis, which was an incredible feeling for me to be here on this campus and right now to be working here. So when I entered UC Davis, again, I mentioned I was, oldest in my family, first in the family to attend university, single parent, low income. And so Pell Grant was, really how I was able to pay for college. So when I was at UC Davis, I had Pell Grants, I had Cal Grants that helped me through, but I also had work study, fair work study. I worked about 20 hours a week with work study, and with all of that, was able to make it through UC Davis, and that propelled me, the success I had at Davis to UC Berkeley, where I obtained my degree there in optometry. I'm actually an optometrist by trade, and a long story, but a path from there led me to where I am today as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. And so, Vice Chancellor Riggan talked about, social mobility, and also Deborah talked about social mobility. I think I'm a really example of that. We came to the United States without nothing other than just the clothes on our back. And, here I am today, speaking to you, working, here serving, all the students of this university. So the potential is there for, if I could succeed, any student at UC Davis, can succeed with some help. And so, with the Pell Grant and doubling the Pell Grant, I think it's such a great initiative. If we had if I had more Pell Grant when I was a student, I probably would have had to work less, right? And because of that, I probably would be able to, focus more time instead of working, into my studies and things like that. Not that, I didn't like working. I think working presented benefits in itself to be able to get the experience. But a lot of students these days, are working one job, two jobs, sometimes three jobs, just to get by through school. And with additional support, I think that will really help them with more time to focus on studies and make it an easier path for them to graduation. And so with that, that's my story. I couldn't be here today without Pell Grants and Cal Grants and Fair Work Study to help me through. And anything I can do to share that story and to help with this cause, I'm gladly to do that.
Thank you so much, Associate Vice Chancellor. I really do think you're another success story. I mean, a lot of us can emphasize with being first gen, low income, and and being on work study as well. And the fact that you're now a vice chancellor at a world-class university just really it shows the impact of the Pell Grant. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. We definitely appreciate it. And last but not least, I want to turn it over to our UC Davis Government Community Relations team, but specifically the Director of Federal Government Relations, Brandon Minto. He's going to be one of the lead strategists in taking our advocacy all the way from Davis to DC and really getting in our foot in the door at the national scale. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Maria. And how we doing, UC Davis? It's a pleasure to be with you here today. I actually went to UC Davis and utilized the Pell Grant, so I'm especially excited for this opportunity to talk to you about some of the strategy behind this Double the Pell advocacy effort and how you can hopefully be a part of it. And so it was mentioned earlier, it's a 4-year effort, and we're trying to get the Pell doubled during the tenure of the first term of the Biden administration. And so in order to do that, we're going to need to talk to our members of Congress, both in the House of Representatives and at the Senate, and also with the Biden administration, and let them know that this is a priority for the higher education community. And so in my job as the Director of Federal Government Relations here at UC Davis, it's my job to help communicate with the federal government and UC Davis and to advocate for the priorities of our campus. And this is definitely one of those. And so I work with all of the 10 campuses in the UC system, and we're working across all of the United States with all of the public and land-grant universities and some of the private universities as well through our education associations, AAU and APLU. And collectively, we're all trying to activate the students like yourselves in this effort. And it's really important for you all to be engaged. And people like me who do the government relations, we can go back and talk to the members of Congress until we're blue in the face, but it's like the idea, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, one student, going back and talking to Congress and letting them know their personal story and why you want to go to college, how you want to give back to your community, and how much the Pell Grant has meant for you and your study and you going and attaining your goals, right? That's worth 1,000 of me's going back there and talking on your behalf. And so the whole idea here is to get you all activated, to get you aware that this effort is going to be happening over the next 4 years, and to hopefully give you some resources so that you can get engaged and can get involved. And so what is that advocacy going to look like? Well, first and foremost, it's going to be congressional engagement, and it's going to be coordinated with the UC Student Association. And there's going to be a week of advocacy. There's actually one coming up in February, the week of February 23rd. That's going to be our initial bite at this apple, so to speak. And it's going to include briefing for our members of Congress and staff. And so the UC Student Association is working with the Federal Government Relations Office to put that on. That's going to be February 23rd from 1 to 2 Eastern. And the whole idea there is to start engaging with the members of Congress and talking about the Pell Grant, why it's important, why it matters, and why doubling the Pell Grant should really be on the table. It's going to continue throughout the year. We're going to have some activated social media days. There's going to be another week of advocacy surrounding the fall meeting of the UC Student Association. And there will be some other updates and efforts coming along. I highly encourage you to sign up for the UC Advocacy Network. We call it UCAN. If you just Google UCAN, you can find it, and we'll also make sure to put you in touch with the information. But there will be efforts coordinated through that, and we'll do some emailing campaigns and so on and so forth. So a lot's going to be in store. And this is really our kickoff event, just trying to bring awareness to it and to hopefully get some fervor built up so we can hit the ground running here in 2021 with this new administration on this important effort. And I see a couple questions that have been added in the chat, and I can try and answer a couple of those real quick. If the Pell Grant is doubled, will it affect other aids such as the Cal Grant? It shouldn't. So they work in tandem with each other. Cal Grant is from the state. And I know Deborah, you have you can add here, but I'll just note that they kind of cover different things in some respects. I mean, they're both intended for low income needy students, but they do have different jurisdiction. The Cal Grant, for example, is able to provide financial aid to undocumented students, whereas Pell Grants are not. So that's one key difference, and that is not something that would be impacted. Deborah, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do not believe that an increased Pell Grant is going to have any impact on the Cal Grant. We are very lucky to have a great state grant program that works in combination with the Pell Grant, so it will not reduce the Cal Grant.
Then another question, if the Pell Grant is increased, what would the effects on college tuition be? We can't forecast everything with tuition. I know that the regions take it really seriously, the issue of college affordability, and it's not at all doubling the Pell Grant intended to allow for a tuition increase or anything like that. And certainly the goal here is to make college more affordable and more accessible. Tuition increase does not really jive with that. I would say that if you look historically, like in the 60s, it cost $120 a quarter to go to Cal. And the reason tuition has increased so much is because the state of California has invested less and less into the University of California. And so if you're really concerned about tuition, that's definitely something to consider bringing up with the state legislature, because every time they reduce funding for UC, then the kind of a net trickle down effect is that tuition gets increased. if the Pell Grant is doubled, where would the money come from? And would that affect the funding of UC? So UC is by and large funded by the state of California. So Pell Grant is the federal aid. So it wouldn't, things that it could impact would be the overall, pie for federal funding for things like NIH or research through NSF. And so we certainly would be advocating to not increase the Pell Grant at the expense of these other really important programs. Did we have should we just go down the line here, or Maria, I kind of started hijacking Q&A. Do we want to, I was trying to get to some of this, but I see more being added in. How you take it from here. I'll take a step back.
Okay, no. Thank you so much for getting to those questions, because it transitions right into what we're gonna do. Yeah, I'll transition us over into a general Q&A, and our girl from UCAN, Priscilla, is going to be facilitating that. And then, yeah, just thank you, Brandon, for all of your insight and kind of showing us what the next 4 years are gonna look like. And then, yeah, over to you, Priscilla.
Hi, thank you to all the panelists for being here and sharing your introductions and individual insights on doubling the Pell. So I'm going to go ahead and start the moderated Q&A. The questions are going to be directed at a specific panelist, but all are welcome and encouraged to answer. So the first question we're going to start off with is directed for you, Pablo. How would you describe, how would doubling the Pell Grant benefit students and alumni?
So Pablo actually had a meeting, so he's no longer in here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. I think I can speak as a student, just from a personal perspective. I'm also a Pell Grant recipient, and I can really kind of feel what Corey was saying. I moved to the US when I was really young, and I don't see a way that I could be in college without the Pell Grant. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we can say. Our student population would be pretty diminished without all those Pell Grant recipients out here. And I think another thing that it's going to do to have it be doubled is kind of that extra incentive to show up to class and really put in the work, because there is a requirement to keep the Pell Grant. So I think seeing that increased figure, I'm not going to say we should go to school for it, but it's definitely in the back of our heads to just keep working hard so that we can keep earning that.
And I would just quickly add, so like basic needs assistance is a huge issue for Chancellor May and a big source of concern. And the UC Regents actually has a special subcommittee on basic needs assistance where they're looking at that issue and how it can be addressed. And Chancellor May is the only UC Chancellor that actually serves on that Regent subcommittee. So it's really near and dear to his heart. And there's a lot of programs on campus aimed towards that. Think something like Aggie Compass, right? Where you have the pantry and you're trying to provide food. And when you see the scope of its utilization and how many needy students are going for that service, it makes it so clear that basic needs assistance is a real issue. And so it kind of, they're working tandem here, and so if you can double the Pell Grant, then you can just hopefully reduce that basic needs assistance burden that much more and hopefully break down some of these barriers that are allowing kids to really flourish, students to flourish and get there and fully utilize their studies and make their way. And so I think that's kind of the idea behind doubling the Pell, is you can really start to address some of these issues that are really impediments to fulfilling the educational dream.
Thank you, Brandon, for sharing how overall it's a bigger issue than just tuition. Deborah, if you can, how does doubling the Pell Grant increase the amount of institutional and state aid available?
Well, it won't increase the institutional aid. Well, that's not necessarily true. Let me back up. So as the Pell Grant becomes increased, and the Pell Grant is an entitlement. So students can receive the Pell Grant up to the full amount, whatever their eligibility is determined by the Fed. So all students can get that, whatever the full amount is that they are eligible for. By increasing those federal dollars, it puts less impact on our institutional aid. So it means that we have more money available to spread to more students. So that is going to be a real benefit to our student body. In terms of state aid, it will not have an impact on the amount of state aid that is available. But the Cal grant, which is very exciting for our students, covers tuition costs. So that the Pell grant will be on top of that to cover other costs of education. So that is what you can expect.
Thank you for clarifying the direction of that. And this next question is going to be open to everybody. What are some constructive ways participants can help support efforts to double the Pell Grant?
I'd say it starts with signing up for UCAN. And one of the questions was asking about the website, and I just posted a link to it answering that question. So you can find that link there. And so that's kind of the advocacy arm of the University of California. And a lot of our big issues are coordinated through the student body through that. And that's how we activate, students to go talk about issues. A great example would be the tax bill that passed in 2017. It was really, really, really bad for students and for higher education. Our students went to bat and went and talked about how bad it was. And ultimately it was made better for our students. So that was a win.
Thank you. And I can speak from personal experience with UCAN and knowing the impact of having students call into hearings and be able to, share their personal stories. Shruti, what can students do to get involved and be advocates for doubling the Pell Grant? That sounds very similar to the first question.
Yeah. So like Priscilla and Brandon said, UCAN is definitely a way you can get involved, but something else I'd like to point everyone towards is our Fund the UC campaign with our External Affairs Office. So Josh Amar is the chair of that campaign. And if you're interested in working on not only Double the Pell, but anything related to student financial aid from kind of a student advocacy perspective, I definitely reach out to our office for different ways to get involved on that. And then again, with like any questions you have, you can always go to our financial aid office. But yeah, I think definitely like Fund the UC, you can reach out to Josh Amar directly. Or you can go to the UCSA Fund the UC Instagram, which I believe the handle is just Fund the UC, and we can send that information out to anybody interested later. But yeah, those are the two main things that you can do to get involved.
Shruti, you brought a good point into the follow-up question. If we double the Pell, are we going to see a decrease in some of the other elements of aid and other UC-funded programs?
No, that will not happen. We will be able to better fund the other programs.
And Deborah, who is currently eligible for receiving the Pell Grant?
Oh gosh, I don't know the income parameters right off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I will have to get back to you with that Q&A. Someone on my staff will know.
No worries. Thank you. Brandon, are there plans to expand aid to undocumented students in the future?
So not immediately. And I would kind of say this is almost like a two-pronged tandem effort. And so on one hand, we have the doubling the Pell, and we have, the eligible population for that is already defined. And there seems to be a ripe political moment, a willingness both on the congressional level and with the new administration to do that. And it's been so long, and we know there's so much need amongst our student population that we really want to try and get that ball pushed across the finish line. Now, having said that, we have, other equally important issues like DACA, like broadening that eligibility that we're also working on and trying to push through. But immigration is a tricky issue, and it seems to be among Congress, and not just, Republican, but Democrat too, that there's almost a desire to take just one bite at the apple. Like they're almost afraid that they're only going to get one bite at the apple. And so all of those immigration issues kind of almost gravitate together and almost get lumped together. And so we're continuing to work on that, but it's not immediately part of this Double the Pell campaign.
Thank you for mentioning that and the other DACA campaigns that we have done in the past for UC. Following up, would doubling the Pell increase the average awards for UC Davis students, and what other programs support Pell recipients at UC Davis? Oh, I'm sorry, this is directed towards like Deborah and Brandon.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
No worries. I said, would doubling the Pell increase the average awards for UCD students? And what other programs on campus support Pell recipients?
There are a number of programs that support Pell recipients. And so so those would include student loans are a component, of a financial aid package, the university grant, supplemental educational opportunity grant, federal work study, there are scholarships, number of different types of scholarships. So there's a lot of different aid that is available. And we also, the other thing that you should know is we match the aid that is available to Pell recipients for AB 540 students. And we do that with our university student aid program. So to the extent that that there is a doubling of the Pell, there is more funding available for all students to receive all different types of aid.
Thank you. I was unaware of that last comment you made about the financial department here at Davis doubling that. And so we're going to wrap up with one last directed question, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the following up on the rest of the chat. But Maria, what is the USAC priority, and what is, I believe it actually might supposed to be ASUCD, correct? Yeah, okay. Why is this ASUCD's priority, and what is ASUCD going to do to advocate for double the Pell?
Definitely, yeah. Well, the whole tagline for AACCD is students helping students. And this comes up in a variety of different ways through our units, our committees and commissions. But I think one of the ways that we can really embody this motto is getting involved in our double the Pell advocacy work. Every week I'm at our AACCD Senate, giving updates on what our external affairs office is doing. And typically the response from them is always super excited. I feel like the student leaders on our campus are very aware and capable of getting involved in our advocacy network. And so I think going forward, it's just going to be a matter of continuing to loop in all the different sections of AACCD and making sure that they're also calling their Congress people, they're writing letters of support, and they're coming to events like this and showing up. And considering AACCD is the largest student-run organization on our campus, I'm very confident in the capabilities of successful advocacy work coming out of there when they support our external affairs office. And yeah, I think it'll be a great resource going forward.
Thank you. Moving on to our chat questions. Thank you for those who have submitted some already. Feel free to go ahead and keep submitting if any more pop up. I believe we answered the first three, so I can go ahead and move on. What are the effects of the new administration's focus on debt forgiveness on the effort of doubling the Pell? The question then says not both can be pursued, correct?
So I think that's kind of getting at Senator Sanders and free college and that idea. And so the whole idea behind that is just making education more accessible. But the reality is, right, is it's still, the college isn't free. It still costs money to provide that service. And so how is that program going to actually unfold? And that's a goal of the Biden administration, certainly, that they've talked about, but they haven't provided a whole lot of specifics in terms of how it would actually be done and what that would look like. And typically, one of the easier mechanisms in doing things is utilizing existing infrastructure. And so, that would be infrastructure like the Pell Grant that already exists, it already works. All of the campuses interface with it. And so one could even argue that by doubling the Pell Grant, you're helping to, further the boat down that stream, so to speak, in terms of creating opportunities, for that debt relief and for more accessible college. And so they don't necessarily have to be polar opposites. It can be kind of a tandem effort, but ultimately the Pell Grants, Pell Grants are a real important mechanism in terms of providing that accessibility, and it's already there and it works. And so you can't just, pull it away and create something new. All those students would be impacted. And so there's got to be, some sort of methodology towards a transition if and when there's going to be one there.
Right. Thank you for pointing that out, that, transitions that big don't happen overnight, and the importance of having the Pell Grant for those to graduate debt-free, and therefore, their children have the opportunity to continue going to college and so forth. As Prop 16 did not pass, would Double the Pell efforts include initiatives to allocate additional Pell amounts towards URM? I'm not sure what that stands for.
It stands for underrepresented minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it would not. It would not. The Pell Grant is strictly targeted to low-income students. And I did look up that cutoff. And for this award year, students that have an expected family contribution of $5,711 or less are eligible for the Pell Grant. So I think that really underscores, how needy these students are that are receiving the Pell Grant. It is so important for us to stand behind these students and really do everything that we can to help them be able to make this financially viable.
Right, so that kind of goes into our next topic about socioeconomic mobility and, what strides would doubling the Pell Grant make for UCD as an institution to give way for students to climb up the socioeconomic ladder and continue to do so post-graduation?
Well, I'll jump in here and say something more about that. I saw an article, it was maybe 3 years ago, and that showed the data for UC Davis graduates 5 years after graduation were making $90,000 a year. That is amazing. That is amazing. And when you think about a Pell Grant recipient who had an expected family contribution of $5,700 or less, and more than half, had a zero EFC, then 5 years later, they are making, and that's an average. So I'm not trying to promise that everyone who graduates from UC Davis is going to be making $90,000 in 5 years, but a lot of our students will. And that is tremendous. That is tremendous. And it is changing the landscape and the economic viability of the whole state of California.
Yeah, and I can speak as someone that's currently receiving this, and just being in an area where everyone is kind of hardworking, pushing towards improving their own lives and stuff, and receiving the Pell Grant, it kind of takes my mind off of survival and more going into building for the future and focusing on degrees that could come after this. Maybe I want to pick up a second one because now I'm not $50,000 in debt. So while the economic promise in the future is great, the actual impact in the moment is also really amazing. As we can see with our other panelists like Corey and Hippolito, like they're both really good examples of what it could look like in the future and what it looks like now. So, the Pell Grant is just doing amazing things so far. And I think doubling it, we're just going to see twice as many great examples of what taking care of our students would look like.
Yeah, I can add on to what Josh just said too, is that from a health and wellness perspective, I talk to a lot of students, and I know talking to a lot of our staff that students, that there's a lot of mental health concerns, because of financial reasons. And so, if we have doubling the Pell, and then students, don't have to worry so much about, how they're going to pay their bills or how they're going to pay their rent or buy food, those kind of things. If we can decrease the amount of stress that students have financially, that's going to only help them with the academic success. And so getting through UC Davis, it will be just like Josh Martis said, it will be a stepping stone to something bigger and better, but you have to get through it first. And giving the students on this campus that ability to not worry so much about what they're going to use to pay for rent or buy food, I think goes a long ways in helping them succeed on this campus.
As we talk about all the benefits of doubling the Pell, would doubling the Pell make additional UCD students eligible? Hence, would there be more students, a greater number of students eligible for aid, or would aid just increase for those who already are eligible?
It would not change the eligibility of students because you will still have to be low income and you will still have to meet those income thresholds. So that would not impact, that wouldn't impact our students with regard to that.
Thank you. And then one of our last questions, I believe, for this evening is, how has the purchasing power of the Pell Grant declined?
I can answer that one. College tuition has gone up and the Pell Grant hasn't. And so every year that it's that same amount of an award and yet tuition is more expensive, it gets less and less and less of that tuition. So its purchasing power goes down. So we are very, very much past due in terms of raising the Pell. So it's time.
Thank you for noting the economic differences and tuition rises and inflation, and aid no longer is what it was once worth. So thank you. I believe we no longer have any more questions in the chat. So I believe that kind of concludes our general Q&A for this evening. I personally want to thank all the panelists again for being here, taking the time the Monday night to discuss all the importance of advocating for doubling the Pell. And thank you. Maria, if you want to say any closing remarks as well.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to give a thank you to all of our wonderful panelists, especially Corey and Hipólito. Just hearing your stories about being a Pell Grant recipient and just the success that you're having even now is just fantastic. And I want to give a shout out to Josh, who is the person behind everything here. As the Fund the UC chair, he does incredible work in our external affairs office and in the general campus community. And also, this is his only second quarter here. So just take that in. Yeah. Fantastic. But thank you so much to everybody who jumped on the call. We appreciate y'all. And we hope that you really take this call to action and join us in our advocacy efforts going forward to double the Pell. But yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and I just want to close out and just say, I'm really inspired by everything that I've heard. I think you guys have made my first event doing this amazing. All the support that I've received. She's not on the call right now, but Lorraine has been a huge help behind the scenes, and I have not been the only person having to pull these strings. It took a team effort, and we just want to extend that to our students. So we want to give them that helping hand by doubling the Pell, and we hope that you guys stick through. The journey is going to be a long one, but at the end of it, it's going to create a whole new economic landscape for California. So just thank you to everyone that spent the time to stay and watch our event, and yeah, we'll see you guys soon.